Hey, welcome everybody. I'm really glad that you're spending your lunch hour with us. My name is Ashley McClure. I'm with Climate Health Now and I've been very excited about this conversation. So, welcome. December 16th, here we are talking about how to protect our public lands and how to organize not only our communities but our elected officials to help to do that. So if you wouldn't mind writing in the chat your name, where you live, and if you want to put your pronouns, that would all be great. And we'll kick it off to Haley.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. I will wait to introduce myself until after I go over this agenda, but thank you so much for joining us. We're going to start with some intros and welcomes from people that you'll hear from today, and then an overview of the Bureau of Land Management's process and their proposed plan to open up nearly 1 million acres of California public lands to new oil and gas drilling and leasing across the Central Valley and the Central Coast. We will hear some learnings from the Southeast area of the United States and their success in stopping offshore oil and gas leases. And then we'll learn more about how we will work together with elected officials to stop this process and to be a part of the decision-making process to ensure that public health and climate are loud priorities coming from California. And then we'll have some time to take action together and actually contact our elected officials. And of course, time for questions and any next steps near the end.
Thank you, Haley. And then I'll just introduce briefly Climate Health Now. So Climate Health Now is a statewide nonprofit that is focused on bringing the health community into climate advocacy in the interest of health equity. And we're really excited today to be partnering with Seafrog. You want to introduce Seafrog and yourself?
Yeah, so Seafrog stands for Climate First Replacing Oil and Gas, who are a grassroots advocacy nonprofit based out of Ventura County with work across the Central Coast. And we're dedicated to a transition away from fossil fuels to protect our community's health, climate, and economy. And we do work in oil and gas watchdogging to air monitoring to youth development and organizing. So really excited to connect with all of you. And yeah, my name's Haley Ehlers. I'm the executive director.
Awesome. Great. So we're going to kick it over to Luis Cruz, who is joining us as the community engagement manager with Hispanic Access Foundation. Just give a really brief kind of overview and introduction to the issue and why this is so important. So welcome, Luis.
Yes, hello. Thank you, everybody. As you mentioned, my name is Luis Cruz. I'm with Hispanic Access Foundation, which is a national nonprofit organization. We do a lot of work in conservation, particularly around climate and public land issues. And to kind of speak a little bit to why we're here and what we're talking about is to the impact of what increasing oil and gas will look like to our communities in California. We're in the areas that they're proposing. These are some of the more populated areas. If you're talking about impacts to Latino or underrepresented communities, these impacts are going to be felt even stronger. So as of right now, they're looking to propose increasing oil and gas drilling in BLM land, which we'll take a look here in a map at a second. They're looking to increase drilling in all these counties, including the Central Coast, right up into southern Bay Area and into the Central Coast. Specifically for the community that I represent and focus on, the Latino community, we're looking close to over 2 million Latino residents who live in these counties. Accounts for close to 50% of the entire Latino population who live and work in these counties. Specifically, I speak to that because they are predominantly the ones that are going to be who work outside in agriculture and construction, and the health impacts of increased oiling oftentimes, unfortunately, are disproportionately be impacting those communities of color or low-income communities. Some of the issues that we're going to talk about more in depth, but I think just to kind of maybe start it off, is the health impacts of what they're looking at. They include cancer, premature mortality, asthma, respiratory ailments. Um, Oil and gas extraction produces toxic air pollution, particularly methane. Other risks include not only to our water, but also noise pollution, spills of toxic chemicals, and explosions. Communities are already facing devastating impacts of climate change. You can see an example perfectly in Southern California, but this is something that could only be even make those impacts even much worse, including those issues around our health. But I'm gonna pass it over to Ashley to kind of speak specifically where we're at in the process, and how some ways that we can support and make sure that we get our voices heard, particularly for those communities that are often not listened to or heard.
Exactly. Thank you, Luis. I'm so glad that you're here and we're all pulling in the same direction together. So yeah, this is the map of the area, and the Bureau of Land Management kind of engagement is something that's new for me and for Climate Health Now. So it's kind of opaque, but what we're learning is they don't keep to their timeline. So this was announced in June that they were initiating this environmental impact statement process to look at oil and gas drilling on our public lands. And basically, what I've gathered from all the lawyers and smarter people is this is kind of like reassessing the zoning for our public lands, is one way to think about it. So if this goes forward and the zoning is allowed to include new oil and gas drilling, that's exactly what we're working to stop. So there was an initial comment period, which we were a part of, and then the government shutdown delayed the draft environmental impact statement publication. It was supposed to be last Friday, and they still haven't done it. So we're in this weird limbo. But once that environmental impact statement gets published, then we are not totally sure. We'll have a 30 to 90 day comment period. It's really terrible timing over the holidays, but then we'll be able to comment on that initial report. There might be an in-person meeting in the headquarters are in Marina, California by Monterey, and then in Bakersfield. So we're hoping for an in-person meeting, but again, we don't know. And then this process is basically the comments that we make on the initial report will be integrated, and then this in summary, it will go to the governor, will like weigh in on it, and then the record of decision is the final publication, and the person that like the decision maker is actually the California director of BLM. So obviously there's influence from like, the president and all sorts of people, but that is the actual person. His name is Joe Stout. We're going to talk about him more, but that's kind of an overview. So we're waiting for this draft report to come out, and then we'll make comments on that together in January. So any questions on that for now? Okay, so we'll come back to that. But in the meantime, Elizabeth, Elizabeth, hi, please. We would love your input.
Hi, Ashley. Elizabeth Fisher with Earth Justice. I was just checking to see, did you indicate that you have a contact saying that it won't be released until January?
No, just that it's not released yet. But
Okay.
What I meant is we're having a meeting January 8th where we together will submit comments to the portal in real time, assuming it's actually out by then.
Okay, thank you. Got it.
Yeah. Thanks for joining. Yeah, please add anything. I've learned a lot of this from you, Elizabeth, so thank you. Yeah. Any other things before we move on? Okay. So I'm excited to invite one of my colleagues, Amanda, to speak to us, who has a really awesome podcast that everybody might enjoy checking out called The Nuance, to talk about what they did in the Southeast to stop offshore drilling. So, Amanda, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ashley, and everyone who's spoken already. I'm Amanda, she, her pronouns. I'm on unceded Tongva land here in Los Angeles, and I'm briefly going to talk about some wins. For me personally, and I don't know about all of y'all, but it's really easy to get caught up in the cycle of bad news. But we don't highlight enough, and we should, is some of the wins that we've had. So it's important to celebrate these as we continue to advocate and fight for some of these other campaigns that we've been working on. So briefly, there was plans to open up federal waters for drilling offshore on the southeast coast. There was significant pushback and political resistance. So earlier this year, the Trump administration announced it will not pursue selling offshore oil and gas leases along the U.S. Atlantic coast. So reversing previous plans to open federal waters for drilling. So we actually had the opportunity earlier today to speak with Joseph, who's a campaign manager from Oceana. So I'll share some of the takeaways from the wins and what we can maybe emulate for more wins, specifically to the topic that we're talking about today. So officials had planned to include Atlantic waters in the broader offshore drilling leasing plan, but removed them after substantial opposition. There was political resistance, not only from environmental groups, but also elected officials objected, including Republicans. So it was a bipartisan pressure. So how, like some details that we could emulate or learn from, how did they do this? So more than 100 coastal communities passed formal resolutions opposing offshore drilling, including a diverse range of folks, environmental groups, fishermen or women, small business owners, and tourism industry. And there were also different types of resistance. So these alliances bloomed into rallies, marches, protests, resolution writing at the city, county, and state level. There was also a sign-on letter, which we have linked and we'll try to emulate as well. And over 100 members of Congress signed it, according to Ashley. I saw that in the notes. Additionally, the campaigns didn't focus solely on climate or wildlife, but mentioned a lot of other reasons to oppose this oil and gas drilling, including economic value, fishing, recreation, tourism, and individualized impacts to the specific organizations or groups who were signing on to this letter or in coalition. So for example, being part of Climate Health Now, I would specifically talk about the health impacts, which hopefully is really applicable to everyone across the political ideology spectrum. So this can help to broaden the reasoning against expanded oil and gas drilling. And so some major takeaways is building a broad coalition, like with CFRAG, EOPA, Hispanic Access Foundation. Thank you everyone for joining today. I really appreciate it and love meeting you all. And I do want to mention too that Joseph shared from Oceana that how much time they spent into creating these relationships and relationship building. So I think this would not only be helpful for this action specifically, but creating these relationships and partnerships will also help with future campaigns. Activating local governments, city, county, state, and then bipartisan engagement is something that they focused a lot on in the Southeast. And then individualizing impacts to specific groups. So economic, health, tourism, fishing, like I mentioned before. And then sustained pressure, which is what we're doing with the multiple different meetings and the different actions that we're taking. There are these acute events such as this that we have to respond to, but these relationships and this sustained movement can be successful for the future. So we also create long-term impact as well. So the blocking the offshore drilling in the Southeast didn't stop on its own. It stopped because communities organized, they came together like what we're doing here today. Again, thank you all for being here, spoke up and sustained pressure over time. So shows that collective action and people power works. That's all I have.
Exactly. Thank you, Amanda. That's really awesome. Yeah, we're trying to learn from them. Does anybody have any questions on for Amanda or anything right now? We have about a minute.
Oh, and I do want to mention, and I don't know if I said it earlier, but this was offshore drilling. So I know that people who have a lot more knowledge about this than me are on here. And offshore versus onshore drilling is very different. But we're trying to take some of the broader ideas from their win. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And then Jim, I saw in the chat put, is there potential of using reasoning and pushing back that would also apply to offshore wind development? Yeah, that actually came up when we were talking to Joseph, that he kept saying that they're consistent. They don't want offshore wind and they don't want offshore drilling, like Republicans in the Southeast. So two complicated sides of the coin. Yeah, I don't know. Is there anything else that you want to add to what your question was, Jim?
Go ahead, Gary.
I was wondering if the strategy in terms of all these various types of activism that helped bring about the ending of the plan to do the offshore drilling in the Atlantic. You just made reference to it, the idea of the ocean versus the land. So there's something more romantic about the ocean in some ways. So that you can kind of get people's interest and get their emotion over it. But one would suspect that there are some equivalents in terms of the impact on the land, whether it's the wildlife. Obviously, the health is what CHN is going to be focusing on, and we've got a lot to work with there. It was part of the analysis to see, well, what did Oceana do that really worked? And then try to think about, okay, how are we going to transfer this to the land? How are we going to motivate people the same way? How are we going to get the communities to, just pass resolutions like the coastal folks do? Because I think it was probably pretty easy to get the coast communities to get on board with that, because it's right there, it's their edge, it's their life. I mean, the coast communities, live with the ocean right, beating against them every day.
Yeah. He said that too. He said, it's people hate oil spills. You don't have to, like, there's no need for, even discussion. Like, it's just given, and that it's different on land for complicated reasons. So that makes our work harder. And he also talked about how the political dynamics are very different between the 9 Republican members of Congress in California versus the Southeast, and their leverage, unfortunately. So we have some important differences. It's true. You want to add to that? Anybody, or Amanda?
Yeah, I think I've been working a lot with Stand LA too, and obviously the tactics just are very place-based and localized. And I think that some of the main strategies, which I can put some of the like highlighted ones that I mentioned into the chat, but I think that there's like broad things that we can emulate with what they did. But I agree that like the health impacts are very bipartisan and everyone can relate to. Yeah, those are my thoughts.
Yeah.
Can I add one thing? The idea of a spill. Yeah, when there's a spill into the ocean, you at least have somewhat of an advantage that you've got a rinsing mechanism happening right away. You've got currents and you've got dispersal. That makes it, but when it reaches the land is where it really gets more impossible to deal with it. So when you get a beach that's fouled, or when you get a river that's fouled, or an area on land, I mean, you can almost think of a spill on land as in some ways being worse. And there might be an example or two where that happened, where it's even a decade or two later and it still hasn't been cleaned up, as opposed to a spill in the ocean where the impact seems to dissipate more quickly. That might be one way to kind of motivate people's awareness.
I think this kind of framing is something we're going to need to do, and to do better. And I'll just plant a little seed, and then maybe we'll transition to Dominic's comments. But we are imagining, so one of the things they did in the Southeast is they held and are holding now people's hearings, because there's not legislative hearings happening about this like there should be. And so in these people's hearings, they have had some elected officials come, and then some like community-based organizations and local leaders. And I think we have been talking about doing an issue briefing in January to invite elected officials in California to like learn about this. You know, they're managing a lot, but to speak really specifically about it. And I think that point about yes, on like oil spills are one thing, and it's very visible and kind of hits people in a certain powerful way. And how can we connect that immediately to also why this on land drilling is so unacceptable? So maybe we can rope you in, Gary, for some ideas around that and framing. But the point is a really, really important one. Yeah, we'll go to you, Luis, and then we'll go to Dominic.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, because I think also to think about is the way we connect with these communities, these issues, is to speak to them, to those issues that they're worried about. And I think particularly in the Central Valley, water is a big issue for
Yeah.
access to fresh water. And there is definitely documented impacts of fresh water from these practices in these areas. So if we frame that around that, that is something that will connect with the communities. And we're talking now agriculture communities, not to mention urban and actual cities and that are worried about water. In a time where California may be in drought, I think
Yeah.
this is something that that's another avenue that I think we can use to be able to connect these really complex issues,
Yep.
particularly when speaking about oil spills on land.
Yep. I hate doing this, but we're gonna move on. So Ken and Jim, if you could put your comments in the chat and we'll get to them. I don't want to run short on, oops. I don't want to run short on time for Dominic and then what we're gonna do together. So I'm really excited to introduce Dominic, who I have been orbiting with, but got to actually talk with more in preparation for this. So Dominic is joining us from New York, no, from, well, you've been an elected official in New York and co-founded Elected Officials to Protect America, which is an organization I'm really excited about that brings lawmakers together and did some amazing work in New York that we're going to get to learn from. So the floor is yours, Dominic. We're glad you're here.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Ashley, and to Climate Health Now, and to Seafrog, and all of you for being here and for the opportunity. My name is Dominic. I also have a background in public health. I was first work that I did out of university, and my dad until recently ran the Department of Public Health Promotion at the University of South Carolina. But we're here to talk about EOPA and how do we defend our lands, waters, and democracy, which is the purpose of EOPA. We're a network of elected officials, state and local, next slide, focused on protecting our lands, waters, and democracy. Next slide, please. It got started in this work in many ways from my being elected to office, serving as a council member, deputy mayor in Caroline, New York, where we found ourselves on the front line of another fossil fuel expansion, the fracking expansion. And long story short, we had 55% of our land leased for drilling. We were able to flip the council locally, put a moratorium in place. There were municipalities all across the state rising up against the oil and gas industry, passing bans or moratoria. We had over 200 municipalities passing bans or moratoria on fracking across New York State. And next slide, we were then, that energy was then being translated into a grassroots movement and really focused on the governor saying, hey, if it's not safe in one town, it's not safe anywhere. And so the New Yorkers Against Fracking Coalition coming together and really putting the pressure on the governor. And some of the ringleaders, the leaders of the coalition, were in the public health community. Sandra Steingraber is an amazing author and very outspoken leader and the founder of Concerned Health Professionals of New York, was the person kind of bringing it all together. And they pulled us aside and said, hey, we need to work together with the local elected officials that are passing these bans and moratorium to be able to turn this into a statewide movement. So next slide. So we work together with a letter to the governor saying, hey, you said you'd make the decision based on the facts and the science. Well, let's do that. Let's do a public health study to prove that it's safe, cumulative impact study, a socioeconomic study. and then got nearly 1,000 elected officials from all 62 counties, bipartisan, on a letter to the governor saying we need to do these studies, and then lifted up their voices in the media. And that was able then to translate that grassroots uprising, really, and across the entire state through the voices of elected officials to give credibility, in addition to many other groups standing up, including health professionals and farmers. But it was really the elected officials being able to give it the political credibility that it needed. Next slide. And really helped also create a political tipping point for elected officials' support in standing up to fracking. Next slide, please. And that eventually they ended up doing the public health study that we called for. And New York concluded, fracking is really bad. And New York became the first state in the country to ban fracking specifically to protect public health, which inspired jurisdictions around the world to ban fracking. And we were recently chatting with the DEC commissioner, deputy DEC commissioner, who was there at the time. He's like, oh yeah, we remember the letter. That was what helped turn the political tide on the issue, was having elected officials from across the political spectrum, from every county in the state, overwhelming numbers calling in support for this. So that really for us was the aha moment of lessons learned. Next slide, please. And ironically, some of the same folks that were organizing New Yorkers against fracking, the coalition, came back to California and said, "Hey, why are we doing this in California?" So it began Californians Against Fracking, which turned into the Brown's Last Chance. Next slide, please. Where there was really a call to from the grassroots to say, "Hey, why are we just fighting fracking? Let's phase out oil drilling altogether." So that's where we, again, working in collaboration with the Grassroots Coalition, next slide, please, organizing mayors, standing up, saying, hey, we need to work together to phase out oil and gas drilling statewide. Next slide, please. So we organized a letter, did work in the media. Next slide, please. Really calling on elected officials, and now with Governor Newsom, to stand up to the oil and gas industry. And it has been amazing to see what the coalition has done. Next slide, please. And our role has really been to lift up the local leadership. So, for example, our founding leadership council co-chair, Megan Sally Wells, who's the mayor of Culver City, helped Culver City be the first jurisdiction in the country to phase out oil and gas drilling through an amortization process, which then LA City and LA County picked up. Next slide. And we really then lifting up the voices of these elected officials through a letter to the governor, calling with over 500 elected officials calling for a statewide comprehensive plan to phase out oil and gas drilling, including no new permits, 3,200-foot setbacks, and a just transition to clean energy. Next slide. And then again, lifting up the voices in the media around the state in collaboration with our partners to really show the political crowd and the overwhelming political appetite in California for a just phase out. And next slide. And what the coalition and our small part that we've been able to play through organizing the elected officials has made an amazing difference to be able to go from Governor Brown being like, literally telling activists at the climate talks in Bonn, I was in the room, I'll put you in the ground, which was really painful, to now Governor Newsom using having used the language of holding big oil accountable and really stepping up. Obviously, there's some backtracking now given the current political environment. But that has been an amazing shift that is really due to the amazing organizing on the ground of the Grassroots Coalition, including CFROG and many others on this call, and also being able to translate that into political power. Next slide. And we've taken these lessons learned from working in New York and California and Hawaii and Maine and elsewhere in between to also working specifically on protecting public lands. So under Trump 1, we organized lawmakers who are veterans. So military veterans who literally fought for our freedoms, fought for our lands, to protect our lands, to stand up for the Land and Water Conservation Fund. And so we worked on getting state lawmakers from all 50 states, next slide, bringing them to DC and meeting with members of Congress. And it was stuck in committee for a year. 2 weeks after we were there, It advanced out of committee, and Trump eventually signed it. We have no illusions he did it because he cared about public lands, but we heard from his staff basically do it for the vets. So that's just a little bit about some of the story and the lessons learned that we've had with that. I'm going to pass it to my colleague Angel, who leads our fossil fuel phase-out work for how does this apply to California for the BLM fight right now, and where do we go from here? Over to you, Angel.
Okay, hi everyone. I will also try and keep this quick, but happy to be here. My name is Angel, and I'm a program officer at EOPA. So yeah, one of the biggest lessons that we've learned over the years, and really the key to our success in organizing elected officials, is the power of peer-to-peer engagement, right? Lawmakers listen to other lawmakers, and when we're able to organize and educate enough elected officials to care deeply about an issue and take action on it, that's when we really see real momentum and real progress toward effective climate policy. And another really critical part of that success has been our inside-outside strategy, grounded in both grassroots and grasstops advocacy. So this work only functions because of the mix of approaches, meeting with organizations and community leaders like all of you who care deeply about these issues and have the expertise to back it up, while also engaging directly with elected officials and working alongside one another, sharing that information and reinforcing the same messages from multiple angles has just been really fundamental to our impact. And we also know there's already a really strong base of support in California for phasing out fossil fuels. Elected officials here are not starting from zero. They have an appetite for bold action to help harness that momentum. EOPA has been working to maintain this most up-to-date and comprehensive list of local government policies and actions across California that protect public health and our environment and our climate from the harms of fossil fuels production, which I'm happy to drop in the chat after I'm done. But yeah, this resource that I will share is designed to do a few important things. It serves as an identification tool, showcasing where leadership already exists in the state. It's also an organizing tool. It helps connect and activate policymakers, and it's a communication tool. It lifts up local governments that are modeling what a statewide fossil fuel phase out can and should look like. And it also gives lawmakers just a centralized, accessible way to see just how much action is already happening across the state. So yeah, right now we're preparing our final end of year updates. But we've officially reached 350 local actions represented statewide, and that includes bans, lawsuits, moratoriums, permit denials, resolutions, divestment actions, etc. So I'll drop that in the chat if you're curious. But yeah, as Dominica mentioned, we've also seen significant success when it comes to coordinated elected official advocacy. For example, like the 500 lawmakers signed on to our oil and gas sign-on letter, urging the governor to phase out fossil fuels. So that kind of collective voice sends a really powerful message. And that also happens because elected officials are hearing from their peers. Next slide. So that brings us to the newest effort within this campaign. As Ashley will probably mention more, Climate Health Now has drafted a strong sign-on letter outlining the harms of drilling on BLM lands and urging elected officials to oppose any new oil and gas leasing on those lands. And so we're incredibly honored to take this letter to elected officials within our California Leadership Council. And our role will be to work with them to review, refine, and strengthen the letter, ensuring it resonates with our colleagues and builds even broader peer support. So the goal is to make this campaign as impactful and successful as possible by centering elected officials as messengers and leaders in this fight. So yeah, with that being said, we would love to aim for 50 signatures from lawmakers. And if we get to 100 signatures on this, we could really generate some media coverage around this campaign and have it be a really big success. But yeah, and I will pass it to Ashley if there's more she'd like to add on that.
So who would like to raise their Zoom hand if you want to help reach 100 people signing on by February 1st? Build up. I see Bill. Who else? Amanda. Okay, great. Everybody, we're going to do this together. So it's going to take all of us to get there. And I'm so excited to be partnering with the EOPA and others because it's going to take us all. No doubt about it. So I was just doing a little back of the envelope, and thank you. Like, that story was really awesome to hear the whole thing, Dominic. So thank you for that, telling, how we've got to this moment and all that leadership. So back of the envelope math, we have 2 U.S. senators, 52 U.S. Congress members from California. So we need all of them. And then the 120 state electeds. So that leaves us with 174. So if we can get, a little over half, that will get us to the 100, which will help to get some earned media coverage about how important this is. So what we're hoping to do is kind of copy what the letter about the Atlantic, Southeast Coast Atlantic drilling. They had over 100 members of Congress who signed, and it went to Trump, and they won. So we're gonna, head in that direction and try to copy. And I just want to name that, there are many people involved, but Joe Stout, ostensibly, he is the California State Director of BLM, but ostensibly he could stop this. I think he has a lot of pressures coming at him, but this is kind of potentially the decision maker that we're going to be trying to connect with. So just to put the kind of clarity on that. So what we're going to spend the rest of the meeting doing is making some calls. So there's nothing passive about this, and I'm really hoping that I am able to offer a useful structure to make these calls. So this is when it becomes an action R. And what we're hoping to do now is A, look up our US Congress member, B, or two, call their office and say, I'm really concerned about the process that's going on through the BLM to open up drilling on public lands in California. Who in the office should I email a fact sheet to about this process so that you can review that? And I guess you could name, we're working on a sign-on letter that we're going to be sharing, but we're anticipating it'll be ready in about 2 weeks. So we're trying to start the conversation with them, make contact, figure out who the right person is to be in touch with, letting them know we're working on the sign-on letter, then email them the fact sheet. And this is kind of like advanced advocacy, but if you're able and willing to schedule a meeting with them in early to mid-January, that would be really helpful. So before we step into the process, are there any questions so far? I see Gary's hands up. Yeah. No, Gary was kidding. Okay. Okay. Any other questions?
Beth made a great point. Do you mind adding all of the links into the chat?
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so Whitney, would you be able to help with that? Because since I'm screen sharing, it's kind of clunky. Okay, so I see people coming in, which is great. So here's our place to organize ourselves. So as an example, I live in Berkeley. This link right here, find your representatives, that will help you figure out who your rep is in case it's been a while since you thought about it. And then the idea is to literally put yourself on mute and call them. And let's see, the fact sheet that we're trying to send them will also be in the chat. If it's not, is it already? I can't see the chat. Fact.
Yep, it's there.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. Okay, any questions before we start making calls? Carol?
I realize you're talking right now about a letter that you haven't written yet, but on the links in the chat for letters that, over 500 people, leaders have signed on, I tried to find out whether my legislator or my congressman has signed it, and I can't access a way to check that.
Yeah, that letter is like, we're not going to be applying directly to this, but we've just started writing a letter about this process for the BLM oil and gas leasing, but it's not quite ready yet. So for today's purposes, we're hoping that you can just share the fact sheet, which is like about this process, but it's not the sign-on letter yet. It's coming soon though. Is that what you meant?
No, I understand that part. I'm saying, how can I find out if my particular congressman has already signed on to previous letters, which makes me think he will or he won't, depending on that.
Yeah.
His
Angel or Dominic? Do you
There
mean
is
this?
a lookup function if you scroll down below the letter. It might take a second to load, but I just put a screenshot in. The letter was mostly local with some state, so it's we have had maybe a couple of folks that have moved up to Congress, but that letter is mostly state and local, so probably not so likely that your U.S. rep has signed it. But there's definitely other letters out there that they may have done so.
Okay, thank you.
Including the offshore, there was obviously the need for offshore drilling as well. So that would be a good one to look up if someone has that handy. And we can see if the California reps have signed on that.
Gotcha. I appreciate the strategy thinking there, Carol. Sorry, I misunderstood. Ken, did you have a question? Ken is on.
Yeah, two questions. First, when we request meetings, are we talking about individual meetings or meetings with sort of a group of people? Typically, when I've done legislative meetings with other organizations, they try to accumulate a group of people for there's a critical mass.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if we like, if I see them on here, I'm gonna start calling, contacting. I can call CHN members, we can call CFROG members, we can call Hispanic Access, members. Like, we'll put it out there to the coalition to then get people, ideally constituent members. But we're hoping that this group of us now can be the anchor, and then we'll bring people to what you are able to schedule.
Okay, so
and I can be the backup.
Okay, so we're looking to schedule placeholders, and we'll get the attendees later.
Yeah, and the meeting is really,
okay.
This is what's going on. This is why I care about it so much. Will you sign this sign-on letter that we will have opposing this? So it's pretty clear, but just kind of holding space to talk about it.
Yeah. Okay. And the second question is personal to me. So before Proposition 50, our representative was Scott Peters, but post 50, it's going to be Mike Levin. So I'm not really sure when that transition occurs, but I'm not sure who I should contact and how I should represent myself in this situation.
That is a very dynamic. I don't even know. I think, I don't know. Maybe I would try calling both. I have no idea.
Yeah. Well, that would be the default thing, but I just wanted to see if anybody had any advice.
Yeah, that's tricky. It's a changing world. Yeah. Any other questions or tricky steps? And then I see Karen said, good. Should we ask the California legislators send a representative to the conference in spring of 2026? Which conference is that?
So there's if I can jump in, Karen. So there's the Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty campaign was successful at COP30, which we were at, to call for a conference in April in Colombia which is the first ever international conference to phase out fossil fuels. So working towards a fossil fuel treaty. Getting California's participation in that would be important. I don't know if I defer to you, Ashley, on strategy, but that might mix messages. I think the first step is get them to support the BLM's ending, opposing drilling on BLM. And then if they say yes to that, then we can do subsequent asks, but I defer to Ashley on that.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. Like, let's just first, stop the bleeding and then think longer term would be probably my sense. If we could do that, that would be, that will be huge. And then Bill was clarifying. So Dominic and Angel, should we let the offices know that there will be a letter in 2 weeks from today, or is there a date you have in mind?
Defer to Angel, but we could say we'll send it to them just at the first of the year, in the first week of the new year.
Okay.
So stay tuned, and would they be interested?
Okay, that sounds good. Yeah. Any other questions I missed in the chat? Okay. Anybody need another minute with this part? Oh, Francis is having trouble editing. I think, Francis, maybe try once more, because I think everybody should be an editor. Yeah, it looks like everybody should be an editor. You want to try again, Francis? Okay. Okay. So thank you. Did anybody get a meeting? Not yet. Got some smiles, but no meetings, which is okay. In my experience, in order to have a meeting, I have to call, get the number, or get the email, and then call again. That is the minimum that it has ever taken me. So I don't know about anybody else. Okay, so we're gonna go to is any other things to talk about before we move on about the member of Congress? Okay, great. So 52 people. The next step is to do the same thing, but for our state electeds. So for our state senator and our state assembly member, because we're going to try, really hard to get all of our members of Congress, all 52 of them, but then the 120 state representatives, we're hoping to also get their involvement, which will, get us to over the 100 signers, hopefully by the end of February. So same thing, and if you need a little reminder of your rep, this is the handy link to do that. And then that'll tell you who your rep is. Does that sound good? Any questions? Okay, so I can use myself as an example to check time. Great. So I'm gonna go off and call. I'll put the script back up.
I did find a list, by the way, of the U.S. reps opposing offshore drilling. I pasted those in the chat.
Okay, maybe like 2 more minutes and then we'll all regroup. That sound good? Okay. Okay, so we might have some homework from this gathering, but look at this. I mean, we're spreading out. We're making contact. This is really good as a start, and I'm hoping to be able to connect with everybody and that we continue the conversation going forward. So, emailing them the fact sheet, which actually Whitney will probably do her follow-up email magic and share that we want to get that to them. It's not a perfect fact sheet, but it's like kind of okay, and we'll actually keep improving it. So if you can send them the fact sheet to kind of start the conversation, then we'll hopefully have that awesome EOPA letter for them to sign on to by the first week of January, thanks to Dominic and Angel. And then meetings. And so when a meeting gets scheduled, just email me. You can email Ashley@climatehealthnow.org or connect@climatehealthnow.org. They all come to me. And we will get the conversation going and get allies to join you for that meeting on Zoom. Phew. Okay. Any comments before we start to round out? Yeah, Amanda.
Yeah, I'm not sure in the follow-up email that Whitney will be sending if we would be able to maybe send like a template email for folks to copy and paste. Okay, that would be helpful.
Yes,
because I'm getting a lot of email addresses.
Yes, good. Yeah, I will actually put the template. So I'll put Ashley will put template email here. You mean the one asking for a meeting?
Yes, or what the sign-on letter means, like kind of just like a one-liner so it's easier for them to see.
Okay, I will definitely put that there. Thank you for asking that. Yeah, and we'll share that in the follow-up. Cool. Okay, so lots of calls. This is democracy in action, y'all. It's not sexy, but it's important. and then we haven't nailed down a date, but we are planning to do, like I said, an issue briefing. It'll be on Zoom. It'll be inviting elected officials and their staffers, and we're hoping to have 2 really compelling speakers. I have some lofty aspirations that I'm going to try for. One will be like an expert about BLM, land management, and then maybe a lawmaker champion. And yeah, we're aiming for like late January to early February to get some more visibility to this. And hopefully we have a elected official sign-on letter with over 100 sign-ons, or at least 50, where we can really celebrate that at that meeting too. So just trying to build and build and build the momentum and visibility. So keep your eyes open for the invitation to that. No, just whenever. Yeah. We'll make it whatever works for you is what I would say. I would say just make the meetings. So to Hyung's question in the chat, is there a preferred time of day for scheduling the virtual meeting? I would say just choose whatever works for you, and then we'll try to invite other people based on that as an anchor. So great question. Thank you. Good. And then Jim's sharing some info, which we can share, maybe grab that link that Jim just shared in the chat to put it in the fact sheet would be good. And then trying to visualize that momentum we're trying to build. So January 8th, we're going to gather together and submit comments together to the BLM's portal about the draft report. So I think, Whitney, if you could put a link to that meeting, that would be great. January 8th. It's kind of cumbersome, so we'll do it together, and we'll have like content that you can submit to the portal. And then they're supposed to have a public comment meeting in person. So if they do have that, our goal is to gather a lot of people in both Marina, California, and then in the Bakersfield offices, and then go in and give comments together. But we don't have the dates yet. The issue briefing, like I mentioned, and then maybe going to visit Joe Stout. We're not sure, but I'm just kind of marinating on that idea of going in person and doing kind of a direct rally or something. So that's what we're trying to build towards in this campaign. And then Beth, I saw sorry about missing your hand. Do you want to say something?
Yeah, you mentioned wanting to get a BLM expert. I have a friend that's worked for BLM for, I think, like 25, 30 years now.
Cool. Yeah.
He's in Marin County. I could reach out to him and just kind of chat with him. But if you...
Please, if you maybe, can you email me and we could connect offline about that? That'd be great to explore.
Yeah, all right, that sounds good. And then I just had a quick comment about what we were doing today. I didn't participate because I kind of already have relationships built with my local representatives, and I like to have a firm ask if I'm going to call them because I know they're busy. So I'm hoping to participate when we have a firm ask. And then also, as to scheduling a meeting with them, I am totally open to that, and I think I could get those. But I'm just trying to figure out what this meeting looks like. It feels a little too vague for me.
Yeah, we will have the sign-on letter, the elected official targeting, sign-on letter by the first week of January. So the idea would be to have the meeting to say, this is happening. This is really important to me as a constituent of yours. I would like you to consider joining the sign-on letter at that time.
Okay. I guess I don't know why that... I guess I will try and just, once we have the sign-on letter, okay, I will just reach out to my reps and see what happens. And if they're not, like, if they don't sign on right away, then I'll try the meeting part. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so wrapping up. So, yep, sign-on letter in a couple of weeks, the beginning of the year, we'll kick it off that way. The issue briefing, and then the meeting where we will submit comments together in January 8th. And then just, this is Climate Health Now things in particular, that we're hosting an in-person meeting at the Cal Endowment in Oakland on January 30th, and that'll be focused on healthcare sustainability. So if that speaks to anybody, we would love you to come. Climate Health Now is working in a coalition for a Fossil Free for Health media spokesperson training virtual. That's in February. And then if anybody wants to go to DC with the Medical Society Consortium on Climate and Health. They do a really awesome annual meeting, and that's going to be the beginning of March. So some things to look forward to. But that was a pretty packed meeting, everybody. I really appreciate you giving it your all, and maybe going out on a limb might have been kind of a new thing for some people. So I appreciate everybody's contributions, and thank you so much to Luis and Dominic and Angel and Haley for contributing, and I really, really appreciate everybody's time. So thank you for being part of this, and hope you all have a great holiday break, and we will be in touch in the interwebs. Okay, thank you. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.